We are back with another episode of low level design. This time I think in the first episode we made a blackjack game. We developed a framework and created a blackjack game. And in the second one we made Stack Overflow. This time let's try to time ourselves and let's try to complete it in 45 minutes flat, or maybe 1 hour. Let's find a problem. I will also keep a clock, and hopefully we would be able to complete it within 1 hour, right? So let's find the problem first. Low level design questions. Okay. Hello. Yeah, sorry, I was just checking the sound. Okay, we need a okay, we can do a movie ticket booking system maybe. The requirements are not given. Maybe I want something where the requirements are at least kind of clear, so that we don't have to get them ourselves. Snakes and ladders, splitwise, Stack Overflow. Yeah, Stack Overflow we are done. Let's see, which one can we do over here? Hotel manager. So let's do something which is a little bit different. So we've already done blackjack, which is sort of a game. We've done Stack Overflow, which is sort of a question answer based setup. Library management system, is that similar to Stack Overflow? You can probably manage books, members and borrowing activities. System support adding, updating and removing books from the library catalog. Each book should have details such as title, author, publication year, availability status. Yeah, I think we can do this. Right, so let's do a library management system. I'm going to quickly create one folder called library management system, and let's add a file with question.txt and add the requirements over here. Right, and we will also open our framework on the right side of things. This is the framework we developed in the first episode when we were doing the blackjack game. I think the first half of that session we were just developing this framework. So if you're interested in understanding more about how we got these bullet points, you can go and refer to that. So anyways, let's start our timer, and yeah, let's get going. So first thing is understanding the problem and freezing the requirements at least, right? Okay, so the library management system should allow librarians to, so there's a librarian, there's a management system. Librarian should be able to manage books, members and borrowing activities. To manage books, members and borrowing activities. Okay, system should support adding, updating and removing books from the library catalog. Each book should have details such as title. Okay, so let's see, we have book, we have a library management system, we have librarians. I'm not sure whether librarians requires a different sort of class yet. Let's see, each book should have details. So book can have, let's say it has a title, author, ISBN, I don't know what that is, publication year, maybe ISBN is just an ID, availability status, availability status, right? And this is probably a boolean. Publication year is an integer. ISBN is probably an integer. I should probably check up what ISBN is. We have a string. and we have history, right? What is ISBN number in books, right? International book number is a national and international standard identification, uniquely identifying books. Okay, it's just an ID, right? Okay, so this is ISBN. Let's just call it ID. Actually, take care. Okay, we'll understand that this is an ID and we'll keep it ourselves. Each system should allow members to borrow and return books. So we have librarians. We also have members, right? And members should allow members to borrow books and return books. Each member should have details such as name, member ID. So okay, it has a name, member ID, has contact info. So for contact info, let's say phone number or maybe email, or if you want to be specific about it, we can just say contact and create another class called contact which has email and phone number, right? And then what else? So we have contact information. We have borrowing history. Okay, borrowing history. That's interesting. So borrowing history, I don't think it makes sense for the member to have a borrowing history. It should be part of the management system where we have a map from member ID to say a list of basically what list of books, probably of what has been ordered. Maybe we'll see how we want to store this information. System should handle concurrent access to the library catalog and member records. Okay, we basically need to use some sort of a lock. System should be extensible to accommodate for future enhancements and new features. Okay, enforce borrowing rules such as maximum number of books that can be borrowed at a time. So okay, so at some point we want to keep track of how many books and what books a person has borrowed, and there is probably a limit to that as well. So that all will be housed, at least right now, within the management system. So usually in LLD, I don't know, either we create a new class called database and store everything there and then kind of fetch information from there, or we just store it in memory by not creating a database class but store it in the classes themselves. For now, let's store it in the classes. Library management should allow manage books, members and borrowing activities. Allow librarians to, okay, so when they say allow librarians to manage books, it probably means add books, remove books, right? We can add books, we can remove books, we can add members, probably we can remove members, right? It's just mentioned manage books and members. And borrowing activities, okay, borrow book, right? And probably return book. So from what I can understand, this is at a high level what the management system should do. The librarian, do we really need a class called librarian? Because we aren't really keeping track of what a particular librarian is doing, or whether when a book is returned, is that given to a very particular librarian. So let's just remove librarian for now, and we'll just assume librarian is someone who's managing this management system, right? Library management system. Okay, we do have a book class with the title, author, ISBN, publication year, availability, right? Availability means if it's borrowed or not. Availability status, yeah, is it borrowed or not, right? Yeah, pretty much. Do we need to keep a track of who is borrowing it? No, we'll keep that in the management system itself. We have a list of members, we have contact. Contact, let's just keep it simple. Let's keep it email. Member ID is an integer and the name is also a string, and let's remove contact for now, right? So I think these three classes seem to be ample. Let's kind of look at, I think one thing we left out is what gets stored in the management system. So the management system needs to keep a track of all books basically, right? And whether each book is present or not in a library. Possibly there are multiple instances of each book as well. So one second, the book ID, how unique is the book ID? Is it unique to a specific book or is it specific to a book type? Uniquely identifies a book including is edition, publisher and physical characteristics. Okay. Or ISBN numbers unique. Yes, are unique. Each book published in the world has a unique. Okay, fine. So one thing I was confused about is whether it's the same book. We have 3 instances of that book. Will the ID be the same for all 3 books since they are from the same publisher, same edition, same version? But it looks like it looks like the ISBN number is unique to a book, right? So since it is unique to a book, ISBN number, the management system kind of needs to keep a track of, should allow to manage books members. Yeah, so ISBN 2. So when the user comes up, how will they borrow a book? What will they enter into the management system? Will they enter an ISBN number, or will they enter a name of a book or something like that? But if you enter a title of a book, title could be mapped to multiple ISBN numbers because each book could have a different publication year or like a different version. Maybe we'll keep it simple, and when when a member is borrowing a book, we're gonna say that they pass in an ISBN number to borrow the book. So maybe we have some sort of a search system over there where the user, or maybe when a member reaches the library, he goes and actually finds the book he wants to take. He takes that book, he comes to the librarian, he gives the librarian that book, and the librarian can just pick up the book, look at the ISBN number and enter it into the system. So I think it makes sense to do it like that. So when we do add books from the librarian's point of view, add books needs to have a member instance, right? And this is just a singular member, right? So we need to have a member instance. We need to know the ISBN of the book. And since this is a library management software and someone is actually going and physically taking a book from the library and giving it to the librarian, when we invoke add books, it's kind of implied that the book is already available, right? So this ISBN number would be of a book which is always available, because if someone would have borrowed that book, the other person, it's impossible for the other person to come and pick up that book and show it to the librarian. So this comes with the caveat that the book is available. That is the assumption over here, because I think it makes sense, unless our library also wants to support features such as someone can reserve a book from an online portal and say, okay, I borrowed the book, but I'm going to come and pick it up later. If we want to keep that sort of, but I think that would just cause confusion, right? Because imagine if 50 people just reserved a book online and there's someone who reached the library, spent 10-15 minutes in the library, actually found a book. That person doesn't know whether that book is reserved or not, and then he took it to the library and the librarian is just gonna say, this book is reserved. So I think that's a pretty bad experience for the person who reached the library. So yeah, we're gonna just assume that the book is available. I think that makes sense. So while adding a book, we need to know which member issued the book. We need to know the ISBN number of the book. Yeah, I think that's about it, right? And when we remove books, we need to know, oh, sorry, this is borrow book, right? One second, this is borrow book and this is return book. When we add a book, that is adding a book to the collection rather than adding a book to the, borrowing a book. So this is borrowing a book, returning a book, member and ISBN, and the book status should change in both of these. Then we have simple add members. We take up a member instance, and remove members. We also take up a member instance, I guess. Member ID, maybe member ID, and what it does, it adds and removes members. Now when we talk about add books, we're adding a new book instance, so maybe it takes up a actual book, because if you look at the scenario, a librarian would actually get a physical book to add to the library, and that book would already have, like, the librarian can actually read the title, author, ISBN number, publication year. So that information will be present with the in the management on the book itself. So let's say add books just takes up a book, right? Yeah. And remove book also, remove book can actually just ISBN number, right? ISBN number. What is ISBN number? International Standard Book Numbers. Okay, International Standard Book Numbers. So I think that makes sense. So let's kind of look at the data structure we're going to use to store. Just a quick time check. It's 12 minutes in. I think we are okay. We're doing okay on time, I think. So management system, what does it need to do? What kind of operation does it need to perform? Easily add books. It needs to keep a collection of books. It needs to easily add books, remove books, keep track of whether a book is available or not, right? Quickly, when someone borrows a book, we should be able to, update the availability status and look up a book using an ID. So since everything is done by an ISBN number, like the book ID, maybe it just makes sense to keep a map, right? Oh, the management system also needs to keep a track of how many books a person has borrowed, and we'll keep a limit on that. But yeah, so it needs to have a map for sure, ISBN number to the actual book instance probably, right? So it's a map from ISBN to book. Whenever we add a book or whenever we remove a book, it's going to be one operation. We're going to go and just update this map. It needs to does it need to keep track of all the members? Yeah, right. Maybe. So basically we can add and remove members, so we can also have another map with member ID, and maybe in the member we can so it also needs to keep a track of how many books was issued by that member. So we have something from member ID to member, right? And maybe it makes sense to add the number of books issued in the member itself, right? And we can keep a limit on that. So whenever we basically hit borrow books, we're gonna find a member instance using the member ID, because borrow books would probably take up a member ID, and in that member we can check whether the number of books issued is maximum, in which case the member would have to return a book in order to issue another one. So what do we not have track of? So at this point I don't think we have a track of what books a particular member has taken, and effectively we would have to remove and add those books. So how do we do this? We can keep it as, so what is the operation we have to perform? We would have to we need to keep a track of how many books we are keeping a track of in the member instance itself. But the actual books, should we keep it in the member instance, or should we keep it in the management system? So a member has the number of books they've issued, and the actual books that were also issued, we can keep that as well in the member system. That is one way to go about it. And whenever, suppose there is a member which came up and he wants to issue a book, we go to the member instance, and within the member we would have a I think it makes sense, right? Otherwise we'll have to keep another map from member ID to, say, a list of ISBNs, but here maybe we can just keep that list over here itself, list of ISBN, right? And whenever, suppose someone comes to borrow a book or someone comes to return a book, from that member ID we have the member instance, we kind of know the ISBN, and from that ISBN we can actually get the book instance and update the availability status to say availability status to true, right? Because now that book is effectively returned. I think if we do this much, we should be good. is what I feel. We just have a map of ISBN to book, and we have a member ID to member, and we are storing the list of books. So the one potential problem with this, is there a problem with this? Does the only thing I feel is that the management system is, no, it is aware, right? The management system can still kind of figure out. So logically, does it make sense for a book, for the list of borrowed books to be part of the member instance and not the management system? I think that makes sense to some extent, because anywhere we're tracking the number of members, and it's inside the member details. We already have a map of ISBN to books, so this is our catalog, and for each map of member ID we have a member ID to member instance, and the member kind of houses the list of books and the number of books that they have issued. Yeah, let's go with this. We are at 17 minutes. I think let's see if we can complete it within 45. Let's start a new file, main.py, and let's put this requirements file over here, and let's just get started. Right, so we'll start with our first class called book, right? And we are going to define a constructor, so when we create a book instance, what all do we need? We need a title of type string, we need a author again of type string, we need a ISBN number. So one thing we can do is, do we want the ISBN number to be internally generated in the book class itself, or do we want it to be passed when a book instance is actually being created? So if we look at the user journey of when that book is created, I think the librarian adds a book to the system, and the librarian is definitely makes sense for the librarian to give the ISBN number, and then the system to actually go and call some API of that international book, whatever, wherever we can check whether that ISBN number exists or not. So I think in this case we won't have an internally generated ISBN, but rather it would be entered, because ISBN is issued not by our management system, it's issued by International Standard Book Numbers are unique, and they are probably unique in the world. So these are issued by some organization, right? And because we are not generating those numbers, so I think it should be passed. So we have an author, we have ISBN, which is let's just call it an integer for now. ISBN is an integer, and we have publication year, let's call it integer, and availability status is something I think that we control, so you're not going to pass it. We have self.title is equal to title, self.author is equal to author. We have self.isbn is equal to ISBN. And when we are creating a book instance, I think the publication year we haven't added, right? Publication year is equal to publication year. This is self.publication year, and finally we have self.availability. Is it availability status? Yeah, availability status is equal to true, because when this book instance actually gets created, it will be at the time when we are adding a book to the library. At that point, no one would have borrowed it, so I think it makes sense for the availability status to be actually true. What else? If we look at the book class, do we have? No, nothing else. So now we'll look at the member class. We'll define an init. I think this is a smaller question than the first two. First two questions which we had done seemed a little harder. We have a name, member ID, email. So in this case, member ID is actually generated by the system, so we are going to keep a track of it here, right? We have ID is equal to 1, and in it we have a member ID which is internally generated. We have an email So let's call it email. We have number of books issued, which is an integer, and we have the actual list of books, right? Books, which is a list of books. Actually, it won't be passed, right? Yeah. So I think the list of books won't actually be passed. Even the number of books issued are not passed. They are internally kept track of, because when we create a new member, we know that the number of books issued is 0, and the list is going to be empty. So it doesn't make sense for anyone to pass that information. So let's add email. Seems kind of weird that the member doesn't have a name. Oh yeah, it does have a name. I missed it. Okay, so we have a name. That's my bad. Name is equal to name, and then we have self dot id. We want to call it member id, maybe, is equal to the member dot id. So when I do member dot id, this id is tied to the class member. So it's going to remain the same for multiple instances. If I create 3 instances of member, then this basically would refer to the same variable. So I'm going to just add it. So the first member would have an id of 1, second member would have an id of 2, and so on, right? And then we have the number of books issued, right? Self dot number of books issued is equal to 0, and of course we have the list of ISBNs, right? Self dot books book ID book ISBN book lists. Let's just call it a book list, and we have maybe book ID list, right? And then here it's basically we have an empty list. So I think that's a member class. Last, but I think the class with the most amount of information is definitely management system. Instead of calling it management system, let's just call it library, I think. Alright, then we define the constructor. Alright, so it has a map of ISBN numbers to a book, member ID, member, all of these things get added, right? So I don't think we need to pass anything in the constructor, but we are going to initialize the, one interesting thing over here is that the management system, does it span across multiple library instances? Like for example, if we have multiple instances of the library, right, we can actually keep these variables of ISBN to book and member ID to member as part of the class itself, because if there are 2 libraries in different regions, suppose there's one in Bangalore and there's one in Delhi, and it's the same, basically the same company operates the library, kind of makes sense to have the same set of members and the same set of books, right? If you go to some other library and someone wants to check that, they go to the library in Delhi and say that in Bangalore is this book available, kind of should be able to check it. So the library class, let's do one thing. Let's add a name over here as well, interestingly, which is library name, library, or maybe a location, right? And what's going to happen is we are going to store the location. Self dot location is equal to location, right? So when someone issues, then we'll also have to keep a track of whether that book is at that particular location or not really, right? Because we're just keeping track of all the books. Only if there's a query, if someone calls up and says that is this book available at this particular library, in that case we are kind of gonna have to search for the books somehow at that particular location. So we were keeping ISBN to a book, but we would also need to keep at which location which books are there, or it might complicate stuff, right? Let's just leave it out for now. I think we can still do it, but Okay, in the interest of time, let's leave it out because in this session what I really wanted to do is complete it in 45 minutes, so let's just do that. Okay, so we have a self, we have actually we don't have anything in this function, right? So yeah, there's one library instance, so we'll keep as self dot what do you want to call this map of ISBN to book? The books is equal to a dictionary, and self dot members is also equal to a dictionary, right? There we have it. That's our library, and then we start adding our functions, right? So we have our add book function, which takes a book instance. Does it make sense to have? No, actually it should take everything, right? It should take the title, it should take the author, it should take the ISBN, it should take the publication year, and it should take the availability. No, it should not take the availability status. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, this is of type string, int, right? And we got these things, then new book, or maybe book to add, whatever, and then we title, author, ISBN, publication, right? So we create a new book instance with the title, the author, ISBN, and publication year, right? So we created a new book instance. At this point, I think we want to add this book to the books, right? But yeah, but we need to handle concurrent access as well. So import threading, self dot lock is equal to threading dot lock. I think it was this, right? I think in the last session we did use locks. At that time I looked it up, but I think it was done like this with self dot lock, and then we kind of, what's the error? Self is not defined. Yeah, I think it was done like this. We'll cross check it. We'll just cross check it once real quick. I think last time in the Stack Overflow question we did end up using lock, self dot lock, and then self dot lock got initialized with threading dot lock and import threading. Yeah, I think that's fine. Nice. Right. So at this point we have created a new book. We need to add it. So self dot books. We add at that particular ISBN number. We're gonna add the new book instance. That's cool. Is that about it? We're just gonna add a book over here. Maybe remove book and self ISBN number, and with self dot lock we want to delete an entry from a dictionary. I'll just quickly look up the syntax for that. I think I forgot the syntax. Python delete entry from a dictionary using a key. Yeah, it's just the delete keyword, del, my dictionary, and p. So del, the dictionary that we have, which is self.books, and we just enter the key over here, which is ISBN. So this should remove, and let's go on to the next function. The next function is add members, add member to be correct. And when we are adding a member, yeah, it won't take in member ID, right? Because the librarian will just ask for the details of the member. So let's just take email and name. Email type string, name type string, and it has to create a member instance. So new member would be equal to member, and that's pretty much it, right? No, why is this not showing me that I need to pass an email and string? It should ideally be showing me that the member class needs to be initialized with an email and name, but I'm not sure why it didn't do that. Anyways, we have a new member, then we do with self.lock, and we do self.members is equal to, no, actually self.members at new member dot member ID, and we set that to the new member object, right? So we have added a member. We can just, like, this is, by the way, is add member and remove member, and let's just copy this. I think it's actually, let's just copy this one because it's pretty similar. Oh, this is not, this is the past ISBN. Remove member, right? And while removing a member, what is going to be passed is the member IDs. Yeah, the member ID is actually passed, right? And self dot members, and we just pass in the member ID. So we were able to remove the member. Now we come to borrow book, right? And borrow book takes in the member ID, which is of type integer, and the ISBN, which is also of type integer. So what does borrow book really need to do, right? So let's kind of add comment over here about the things that borrow book needs to do. It needs to check if the user is past the limit of borrowing. User can borrow another book, maybe, right? Need to check if the book is available. I think these are the only two checks, right? If the user can borrow another book and the book is available, then they should be able to borrow it. I think these two checks are justified. We will create, let's create a global variable called borrow limit, and let's set it to 10, or maybe actually we have to test the code, so let's set it to 2. So per member they can only borrow 2 books. Let's go to borrow book function, and we say that we need to check if the user can borrow another book or not, right? So we need to, the member is equal to self dot with self dot, will this come in the critical section that we're just getting the member instance? Will that really come in the critical section? Like if someone is deleting, and yeah, maybe it should, right? Because concurrently it's possible that this particular self.members is deleting one element and also reading another. I'm not sure whether that will cause a problem. I think we should keep it in the critical section. No harm in keeping it in the critical section. Self dot members, and we put in the member ID. We got the member instance, and we do that if member dot, why is it not showing me? Oh, that's why, because it did not, wait, was it? Will it show me now? What am I doing wrong? It's not really, the problem is the prompts, like it's, yeah, it's on 2 only, right? Should have worked. Number of books issued is smaller than, strictly smaller than the borrow limit. If not per limit, then just return, right? and this is the condition where the user is over the borrowing threshold, right? And the other is the check availability of book, right? And we get the book instance in that. We get self dot books and we do ISBN, right? And if book dot is instance, that's so weird. Why is it not? During add books we're calling a new book function. That's not right. Yeah, still it doesn't work. Book instance, book kind of takes in availability status, right? Yeah, book dot availability status is, if not of book dot availability status, which means this is false. And if that is the case, again we return because the book is not available, and here user can borrow the book. So the user can borrow a book. So what does that mean? The user can borrow a book. What do we want to do in we want to update the availability status, and we want to update the member object to have the actual book, right? So let's update the member object first. Member dot, not sure why it's not showing me the functions. Member of type any. Self dot members, when I updated self dot members, I added a new member object to it, right? Maybe it's because I did not define a type over here. Okay, anyways, so the member object just has the IDs, right? Member dot number of books issued, you can add 1 to it, and member dot book IDs, I guess, book ID list dot append, and we are going to append the ISBN number over here, right? And we are also going to take the book instance and set the availability status to false, because now the book is effectively borrowed, right? What else? So we can return a book. Return book, I think that's the last function here. Self takes the member ID and takes ISBN, right? With self dot lock, and we want to be able to return the book. Well, I think in returning a book we really don't want to check anything as such, but since it's just a return, let's kind of just take up the member and book instances, and let's update, right? Let's see, these are the 3 variables which got updated last time. So the number of books issued becomes -1. The book ID we need to basically delete from a list, right? Python, how to delete from a list using the value remove function, right? So we have book list dot remove, and the availability status we can set it back to true. That's pretty much it, right? So this should return a book. Are we done? We're at 43 minutes. I think we can start testing our code. Yeah, I think we can just. So what all do we need to test it? right? For example, we need a library instance for sure. Lib library instance doesn't take in anything. We need a couple of members, so we need member 1 and oh, it should, one second, when we call the add member email name, it doesn't really return anything, right? So we can just, one second, so when we return a book or we borrow a book, we do need the member ID, right? So when we effectively, when we are adding the members, we need it would be better if we can just return the new member.id over here, right? So that we can use this ID later on in the, when that member borrows a book, because the borrow book function expects a member ID. So member ID 1, and we call the lib.add member, and this takes in two things, email and a string. So let's add some xyz at abc.com and a name. The name we can keep as John Doe, right? We got one member. Let's add a couple of members, right? Let's add 3 members. Let's add 2 members. I think that's enough to test our use cases. Let's add 2 members, and we have, let's for this one, let's just do ert@abc.com, and let's change the name to Hillary Adams. Arbitrary names, but okay. So we got 2 members. So now what we want to do, what all do we want to test over here? We want to test the borrowing threshold, right? We want to test the, so we assume that we want to test the borrowing. We assuming that, so it's impossible for 2 users to try to borrow the same book, but we do want to test returning, right? So how do we test this? We return and then borrow from another member. Okay, so we can test the borrowing threshold, then we return a book, we borrow from another member. What else? We obviously checked adding members. We can check removing members as well. Interestingly, over here, if we are sort of assuming, right? So when we do borrow book, we are assuming that this member ID exists. So if this member ID actually doesn't exist, then that's going to cause an issue. We haven't handled that case. Okay, so borrowing threshold. If we do first we have to add a couple of books to the library, right? Lib.add book. We need a title. Let's say Harry Potter. We need the author, J.K. Rowling. What else? We have some number. Let's just say it's 123. And publication year, I don't remember the publication year. We're gonna go with 2000. So we added a book. Let's add a couple of more books, right? Let's say this is Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, and let's say this is 987 and it was maybe launched in 2015. I know it's not launched in 2015. I don't know the exact date. Maybe it was like maybe in the 1990s, 1995. I don't know. So let's add another book. We'll say the knife thief. Actually, the book thief was the. Oh, I forgot the name. Who wrote the book thief? Let's say author 1. And let's do 444. Maybe it's launched in the 1990s. And the last book which we're gonna do is the Kingsman. Let's say it was written by Surfer, and it is 222, maybe 2015. Okay. Ideally, when we add a book, it should verify that that book, these details are correct. Maybe there's some service somewhere. Basically, maybe the same organization which provides the ISBN numbers have an API where we can check whether this book exists. Because ideally, we would not want, if someone hands over a fake book, we do not want to add that to the library. So at this point, we should be adding some sort of a validation check to see if that book is legit or not. So we do a borrow book, which takes a member ID, and so we do a member ID and the ISBN number. ISBN number is this. So we kind of need to keep checking also, right, whether everything is working fine. So let's implement a override the toString function, and let's just string to print, and we do string to print, or maybe we'll just print it out, right? Yeah, it's okay. We can, for now, we'll just print it out. Books for each book in self.books. We print the string representation of the book, and something similar for members as well. Members, right? So for each member in members, we print the string representation of member. But since we're doing that, we also kind of need to add these functions here as well, because when we call a toString on this, it's gonna, when we do like a string representation of member or book, it's gonna call the toString method of that, which is sort of not defined. So we are going to define it here, self.name plus, and let's just add a name and email. That's pretty much it. Okay, that'll be enough for us to validate it, name and email. And we'll also add this function to our books. We'll give the title, and we will give the ISBN. Yeah, it's 51 minutes. I think we are a little bit over, but we might be able to complete in 1 hour, hopefully. So, okay. So after adding the books, creating 2 members, let's check it out. Let's print out the library. Maybe we should say string representation of the library. After adding the books, let's check it out. After one member borrows a book, let's check it out. So first I'm running this again. Let's see if there are any errors. Library management system. We have Python main. Python is not recognized. Yeah, of course, Python main. So looks like some problem. It says that built-in function or method object does not support context manager protocol. What does that even mean? We did lib dot add member, and we are just, we were just calling add member. Type error. So odd. So we created a library instance, and we called add member, and add member took a email and created a member and updated this members table, which is there. Not 100% sure what went wrong over here. So it says type error, built-in function or method object does not support context manager protocol. Let's just search for this. This is a new error. I've never seen this before. Let's see what that means. happened on line 56. Oh, this at self.lock. Ah, okay. I think I have to call the lock function, right? Oh yeah, man. Okay, that was weird. Okay, so we still got an error where it says string returned non-string. Yeah. I think they're printing it out, but we still had to return something over here. Ideally, we are supposed to return this thing, right? Ideally, it should work like this. But in the library function, let's just because in the library function, let's just do a normal return of a string. Okay, let's test it out again. Right, so let's validate now. So we have, okay, we added two. So initially, 1 second, let's clear it. Okay, so we added, what did we do? We added 2 members and we printed it. So yeah, books is empty, members is 2. Then we added 4 books. So we have 4 books and 2 numbers. Then library.borrowBook was called, which was also 4 books and 2 numbers. So ideally, we should also kind of print out in books whether that book is available or not, right? So let's add to this self dot availability status, right? And let's also, availability status is of type string. Yeah, because we don't know whether that got borrowed or not. Wow, it didn't. That's odd. Why did it not print the availability status? So when it prints out books, it just prints out the book ID for some reason. In the library, when we do for each book in self.books, this is the book ID, is it? Man, so it's self.books, sorry, books at the book ID. I think that makes sense. So this is also actually member ID. What it's doing, it's kind of going through the, alternatively what I could just do is let's round it back a little, and let's say we have the ID and the book, right? Over here we're gonna do this and the member, and this should work. Okay, this should not work. Cannot unpack non-iterable int object. Self.members is a dictionary, right? Why is it considering it as an int object? This should be the value. What am I doing wrong over here? Python iterate through a dictionary for each key in this, or key slash value in dot items. Oh, okay. For this in so we have to refer to this. Interestingly, why are we using items in case we need key and value? Like, because for just the key items, iterate over key value present dictionary is more efficient Pythonic way of accessing the key value separately. Readability. So the items call actually directly returns tuples of key value pairs, making the code more concise. Okay, so it probably returns a list, right? It needs to access the value using the key, which sometimes can be less intuitive. Unnecessary dictionary lookups. Interesting. Some problem, can only concatenate string, not int. Yeah. ISBN is definitely int. Start ISBN. Let's convert it to a string. Let's try it again. Oh, this time it worked. Okay, so we got 2 members, and then we got a couple of books. All of them are available, and then the Harry Potter got taken, which is nice. Then let's try out the lib.borrow book 3 times, in which member takes this, takes the second book, maybe takes the last book. So this last call should fail, so the Kingsman by the Silver Surfer should stay available because our threshold is 2, which is sort of correct also, right? Did we print it after that? Yeah, we did print it after that, so it makes sense that the Kingsman is availability set to true even though we tried to borrow it. So we weren't able to borrow it, so let's now do lib dot return book, right? And we are going to, what does return book even want? When we return a book, takes a member ID and ISBN number, right? So member ID is this, and the ISBN number is 123. So that's how we're gonna return the book. And then let's say that some other member borrowed the book, the same book, and then we print it out. Okay. So from the top we have 2 members, then we added a couple of books, we added 4 books, and then what did we do? We added 4 books, then we borrowed the first, second and the 4th book. So we added members, the books, so first, second and 4th. The 4th didn't work because it's false, and then yeah, then there's some problem like library object has no attribute lock. Did you mean lock? What did I do? Oh, I used capital L instead of small l. My mistake. Let's run it again. Oh, there's another error. Key error. So that member doesn't exist, or what? What happened in borrow book? The borrow book didn't work. Borrow book. You know which borrow book didn't work? Member ID 2 didn't work, right? It wasn't able to find the member ID. We did add the member, right? So we had that member ID from this, and then when we borrowed the book with that member ID, it didn't work. That's odd. One second. So at this point, when we talk about members, we have these. So maybe in the member we should print the ID as well. See what's going on. Yeah, let's just add the self dot ID as well. Not sure why it wasn't. Okay, let's go. So, oh, they take it as the same member ID. That's the problem, right? Because yeah, it's taking it as the same member ID for some reason, which it should not do. When we instantiate a number, what are we doing? We do self.member ID is equal to member.id, and then we add 1 to the ID, right? So why is it taking it as the same ID? So if I go to the add member function, it creates a new member, and then it takes the member ID and marks it over there and returns the new number.id. Yeah, ideally it should be, also it should start from 1, right? Why is it seems to be some problem. Thought we used a similar thing over here as well. So we had done id is equal to some value, and then we used to do take that id and comment dot plus one. Yeah, quick time check. Okay, we are crossed. I don't think we were able to achieve our goal, but you know, this is interesting. Why isn't the id working? The id we had set to 1, and then when we initialize the member object, we specifically take this 1 and we assign it to the member id, and we say that, you know, member.id plus 1. So now the id becomes 2. So the next time someone creates a member, it will be of 2, right? And why is it 3 all of a sudden? And we are printing self.id, so this is not the same id as this. It should be the oh, it's self.member id. Oh, okay, we're printing the wrong thing. This id is the class id, and okay, that's the member id. You were printing the wrong thing. Oh my. Let's see. So yeah, 1 and 2, which is correct. Then we have a couple of books. We have the members, and then these two got false. The members are still there. Then we went book is equal to true, false, true. Why did it go true, false, true? 1 second. What did we do? So after borrowing, 1 second, we borrowed a bunch of books, right? False, false, true, true. So false, false, true, true is probably when we borrowed 3 books, right? False, false, true, true. And after that we returned a book. So false, false, true, true. And then it became true, false, true, true, because we returned the first book. The first member returned the first book. And effectively then true, false, true, true. And then and then someone else borrowed that book, right? Then it should become false, false again. Why did it print true, false, true, true so many times? It even added like extra members for some reason. Huh. There's definitely some problem in the code. Wait, what just happened? Okay, it's taking false, false, true, true, and then oh, is it a concurrency issue? No, right? It's just, I don't think it should be a problem with self dot. Do we need to also add a lock here because we are accessing same data? No, right? So it was fine till here when we reached true, false, true, because you know we returned this one, and then at this point Hillary Adams should have borrowed Harry Potter, right? And at that time it says that, you know, we got for a book member ID 2 and couldn't find 3. Why couldn't it find 3 again? Let's see. Let's actually print this. I have a feeling this is coming out to be 3 somehow, which should not be happening. Yeah, this is coming out to be 3. So this member ID 2 is coming out to be 3, but add member we only called twice, right? Why would it come out to be 3? What are we doing in the borrow book function? We take up the member ID which is somehow 3. So add member is returning 3 effectively if we look at the add. Oh, okay, it's not ID, right? It's member ID. Oh man, it was returning the class variable ID. It was returning the class variable ID. I think, yeah, that was the issue. Yeah, so here you can see that we got 2 members. We got 4 books and 2 members. Then we have the first 2 books. So this is testing the threshold. The first 2 books got taken up by John Doe, and then we returned Harry Potter, and then Hilary Adams kind of just took up the Harry Potter. Oh man, I think that was it for today. I think it was better than the last 2 sessions overall. If we hadn't run into some debugging issues, we probably would have been able to get it done within the hour. That's okay. This is only the 3rd video. I think I'm gonna keep doing it till I have a certain level of confidence in low level design. I don't care if it takes 5 videos, I don't care if it takes 10 sessions, I'll just keep doing it till I have that confidence. This was the 3rd one. I feel like I'm gonna have a decent amount of confidence by the time I reach the 5th or 6th session. And when I say confidence, I mean that I should be able to go through any of these type of questions within 1 hour, like between 45 minutes to 1 hour, including the coding. So yeah, until next time.